They said she was nothing, a shadow in the palace halls, too weak to matter, too scared to speak up. But the night Rosalie Carter made one reckless choice, she didn't just cross a line. She shattered an empire. Because when you reject an Alpha King's mate bond, you don't just break his heart. You unleash a monster that brings kingdoms to their knees. Stay until the end to see how a timid maid becomes the only force powerful enough to save or destroy them all. Drop a like and comment which city you're watching from. Ite, Part 1. The mistake that changes everything. The wine was terrible. Cheap, sour, and burning all the way down. Rhea should have stopped after the second glass, but the other maids kept refilling her cup, their laughter sharp and bright in the cramped servants' quarters beneath the palace kitchens. "Come on, Rhea, just one more." Mara leaned across the wooden table, her cheeks flushed pink. "You never drink with us." "What, you think you're too good for us now?" "No, She's scared," Lena interrupted, grinning wickedly. "Our little Rhea, always so careful, always so proper." The words stung more than they should have. Rhea Carter had spent her entire life being careful, careful not to upset anyone, careful not to speak out of turn, careful to fade into the background so thoroughly that even the head housekeeper sometimes forgot her name. She was 22 years old and had never once caused trouble. Maybe that was the problem. "I'm not scared," Rhea said quietly, but the words came out weak, unconvincing. Mara and Lena exchanged glances. Then Mara leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Then prove it." "Prove what?" "We dare you," Lena said, her eyes gleaming with mischief and cruelty in equal measure. "Go upstairs, into the noble wing, and, I don't know, do something bold, something you'd never normally do." Rhea's stomach twisted. "That's against the rules. We're not allowed." "See? Scared." Mara sat back, smug. "I knew it." The other maids giggled. The sound scraped against Rhea's nerves like nails on stone. She didn't know if it was the wine or the years of being invisible finally catching up to her, but something inside her snapped. Just a little, just enough. "Fine," Rhea heard herself say. "I'll do it." The laughter stopped. Mara's eyebrows shot up. "Wait, seriously?" Rhea stood, her head spinning slightly. "You wanted bold? I'll give you bold." She grabbed the tray of crystal decanters meant for the northern wing, a delivery she was supposed to make tomorrow morning, and headed for the servants' staircase before she could change her mind. Behind her, she heard Lena whisper, "Oh, she's actually doing it." The noble wing of Blackstone Palace was a different world. Down in the servants' quarters, everything was stone and practicality. Up here, the floors were polished marble that gleamed in the lamplight. Tapestries lined the walls, woven with gold thread that caught the flicker of enchanted sconces. The air smelled like cedarwood and expensive candle wax. Rhea had been up here before, of course. She'd cleaned these halls 100 times, but never at night, never alone, and never while slightly drunk. The tray felt heavy in her hands. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Just set it down somewhere. Anywhere. Then go back downstairs and tell them you did it. But as she turned the corner into the eastern corridor, she realized she had no idea where she was. The wine had muddled her sense of direction. Or maybe it was the adrenaline. Either way, nothing looked familiar. The hallways all looked the same, elegant, imposing, and utterly silent. Panic crept up her spine. "Don't get caught! Don't get caught! Don't—" She spotted a door slightly ajar at the end of the hall. Warm light spilled from the gap. Relief flooded through her. She could peek inside, figure out where she was, maybe leave the tray there and slip away. Rhea pushed the door open and froze. It wasn't just a room, it was a suite. Massive, luxurious. A 4-poster bed dominated one side, draped in deep crimson fabric. But what caught her attention was the bathing chamber visible through an arched doorway. Steam rose from a large copper tub, and the scent of sage and cedarwood filled the air. Someone had drawn a bath. Recently. Rhea should have left immediately, should have turned around, fled back downstairs, and pretended this never happened. Instead, she stared at the tub. It looked incredible. The water was still steaming. Rose petals floated on the surface. Expensive oils shimmered in the lamplight. Down in the servants' quarters, They bathed in cold water from a shared pump. Once a week, if they were lucky. Rhea set the tray down on a side table. Just for a minute, just to see what it feels like. The wine made everything feel distant and dreamlike. Her fingers found the ties of her rough cotton dress. It slipped to the floor. The water was perfect. Hot enough to sting, but not enough to burn. Rhea sank into it with a sigh that came from somewhere deep in her chest. The heat unknotted muscles she hadn't realized were tense. She closed her eyes. This is insane. This is the stupidest thing you've ever done. But also, it felt amazing. For the first time in her life, Rosalie Carter let herself relax. She didn't hear the door open, didn't hear the footsteps crossing the main chamber. What she heard was a voice, low, dark, dangerous. Who the hell are you? Rhea's eyes flew open. A man stood in the doorway of the bathing chamber, tall, broad-shouldered. His presence filled the space like a storm filling the sky. He wasn't just handsome. Handsome was too small a word. He was carved from shadows and firelight, all sharp edges and controlled power. Dark hair fell across his forehead. His eyes were amber, bright and burning, fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. He wore travel-stained clothes, dust on his boots, a sword still strapped to his hip, and he looked furious. Rhea's brain short-circuited. She should have screamed, should have scrambled out of the tub, apologized, begged for mercy. Instead, the wine still buzzing in her veins, she said the first thing that came to mind. Who are you? The man's expression flickered, surprise maybe, or disbelief. This is my room, he said slowly, as if explaining something to a child. That is my bath. Oh. Rhea blinked at him. Sorry, I didn't see your name on it. What was wrong with her? What was wrong with her? The man took a step forward, then another. He moved like a predator, controlled, deliberate, every muscle coiled and ready. I'm going to ask you one more time, he said quietly. Who are you, and what are you doing in my chambers? Rhea's heart slammed against her ribs. Fear finally started cutting through the wine haze. But instead of cowering, instead of groveling, she found herself sitting up straighter in the water. My name is Rhea, she said, and I made a mistake. Clearly. I got lost, she continued. I was delivering wine to the northern wing, and I took a wrong turn, and then I saw the bath, and She stopped, swallowed hard. I shouldn't be here, I know that. I'll leave. She started to stand, then remembered she was completely naked. She sank back down, her face burning. The man watched her. Those amber eyes tracked every movement. Then, impossibly, the corner of his mouth twitched. You're drunk, he said. A little, Rhea admitted, and you wandered into a stranger's private chambers, drew yourself a bath. It was already drawn. And now you're sitting here completely naked, arguing with me. When he put it like that, it did sound ridiculous. I'm sorry, Rhea said quietly. All the bravado drained out of her at once. I'm really, really sorry. If you could just turn around for a moment, I'll get dressed and go. You'll never see me again, I swear. The man studied her for a long moment. Something shifted in his expression. The anger cooled, replaced by something else. Something harder to read. What's your name again? He asked. Rhea. Rosalie Carter, but everyone calls me Rhea. And you're a servant. It wasn't a question, but she nodded anyway. The man was quiet for a moment, then he turned his back to her, facing the doorway. Get dressed, he said. Then we're going to have a conversation about palace security and why a drunk maid was able to wander into the royal wing unnoticed. Rhea scrambled out of the tub, water sloshing everywhere. She grabbed her dress from the floor, yanking it over her still damp skin. Royal wing? She repeated. This is the noble wing. The royal wing is in the... She stopped. Oh no. The Eastern Tower, the man finished, which is exactly where you are. Rhea's stomach dropped. But that means you're... He glanced over his shoulder. The lamplight caught his face, and for the first time she really looked at him. Strong jaw, scar cutting through his left eyebrow, amber eyes that seemed to glow in the dim light. Everyone in the kingdom knew those eyes. Kael Draven, she whispered. You're the king. He didn't smile. And you're in a tremendous amount of trouble. Rhea couldn't breathe. King Kael Draven, the Wolf of Blackstone, the Alpha who had united 6 warring territories through sheer force of will and violence. They said he was more beast than man, that he'd killed his first enemy at 14, that his wolf was so powerful, so dominant, that even other alphas cowered in his presence. And she'd just bathed in his tub and asked him who he was. "I'm going to die," Rhea said faintly. Kale turned fully to face her. "Probably not, though execution is technically on the table for trespassing in the royal chambers." Her knees went weak. He sighed. "That was a joke." "A joke?" Rhea repeated. "A bad one, apparently." He crossed his arms. "Sit down before you pass out." She sat on the edge of a velvet chair, mostly because her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. Kale leaned against the doorframe, studying her. "How long have you worked here?" 3 years? "And in 3 years, no one taught you which parts of the palace are off limits." "They did. She couldn't explain it. The wine, the dare, the sudden desperate need to be something other than invisible for once in her life. "You just decided tonight was a good night to ignore every rule you've ever learned," Kael finished. "Yes." He was quiet for a moment. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. It was a rough sound, rusty, like he didn't do it often, but it transformed his face, made him look younger, almost human. "You're either very brave or very stupid," he said. "Stupid," Rhea said immediately. "Definitely stupid." "I don't know. It takes a certain kind of bravery to sit in a king's bathtub and then argue with him about whose fault it is." "I didn't argue. You asked me who I was, in my own chambers, while naked." Rhea's face burned hot enough to catch fire. "Can we please stop talking about that part? It's the most interesting part. It's the most humiliating part." Kael pushed off the doorframe and crossed to a cabinet. He pulled out 2 glasses and a bottle of something amber. He poured 2 fingers into each glass, then held one out to her. "Drink this. You'll feel better." Rhea stared at the glass. "I've had enough wine tonight, Your Majesty." "This isn't wine. It's whiskey, and it'll help with the shock." She took the glass with shaking hands. The whiskey burned even worse than the cheap wine, but he was right. It did help. A little. Kyle drank his own in one swallow. Then he set the glass down and looked at her properly for the first time. His eyes caught hers and held. Something happened in that moment. Something Rhea couldn't explain. The air between them seemed to shift, thicken, like the moment before a lightning strike. Kale's expression changed. His pupils dilated. He took a step back, then another, as if she'd burned him. "What is your family name again?" he asked, his voice suddenly rough. "Carter. Why?" "You're not nobility." "No, I'm a maid." He stared at her. "That's impossible." "I'm fairly certain I know my own job." "No." He cut her off, his voice sharp. "You can't be—" He stopped, ran a hand through his dark hair. "Leave." Rhea blinked. "What?" "Get out. Now." The shift was so sudden it gave her whiplash. One moment he'd been almost friendly. Now he looked at her like she was something dangerous, something wrong. Rhea stood on shaking legs. "I'm sorry. I don't understand what I—" "Go," Kael said, and this time it came out as a growl. Not a human sound. A wolf's warning. Rhea ran. She flew out of the room, down the corridor, and didn't stop until she reached the servants' staircase. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. What had just happened? One moment he'd been laughing. The next he'd looked at her like she was a threat. She pressed her back against the cold stone wall and tried to catch her breath. Mara and Lena would be waiting for her. They'd want to know if she'd actually done it, want details and proof and laughter. But Rhea couldn't face them. Couldn't face anyone. She slipped back to her tiny shared room in the servants' quarters and lay in her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling. She could still feel the heat of his eyes on her skin, could still hear that rough laugh, could still see the way his expression had changed at the end, from curiosity to something that looked almost like fear. What did I do? Boon. Rhea didn't know it yet, but in the royal chambers above, Kael Draven stood motionless in the center of his room. His hands were shaking. His wolf was clawing at the inside of his chest, howling one word over and over. Mate. The little drunk maid with wild brown hair and defiant eyes. The one who smelled like lavender and fear and something achingly sweet. The one who'd sat in his bathtub and looked him in the eye without flinching. She was his fated mate, and she was a servant. Kale grabbed the whiskey bottle and drank straight from it. This was impossible. It was a disaster. It was everything he didn't need and couldn't afford. He'd spent 10 years building alliances through strategic marriages and political contracts. His court was a carefully balanced web of power and compromise. He couldn't afford a mate bond, especially not with someone so completely, utterly wrong for him in every practical way. But his wolf didn't care about politics, didn't care about strategy. It only cared about her. Mine, it whispered. Ours. Go to her. Claim her. Keep her. No, Kale said aloud. He drained the bottle, threw it across the room, watched it shatter against the wall. He was the king. He was in control. He would bury this, ignore it, pretend tonight never happened. The mate bond was nothing but biology. Instinct. He was more than his wolf. He'd proven that 1,000 times over. He would prove it again. But fate, as it turned out, had other plans. Because the next morning, Kyle was woken by his chancellor pounding on his door with urgent news. The Princess of Northmarch, his promised bride, the keystone of a critical alliance, had been delayed by storms. She wouldn't arrive for another 3 weeks. The visiting nobles from the southern territories were already here. The betrothal ceremony was supposed to happen in 2 days. If they postponed, it would look like weakness, like the engagement was falling apart. They needed a stand-in, just for the initial presentations and formal dinners, someone to play the role of princess until the real one arrived. Find someone, Kyle ordered. I don't care who, just make it work. His chancellor bowed and hurried away. And in the servants' wing, Rhea Carter was about to have her entire world torn apart. Because when the palace staff went looking for a young woman who could convincingly play a princess for a few weeks, they found someone with the right build, the right age, and, after a bath and proper clothes, the right look. Someone no one important would miss. Someone expendable. Someone who'd already proven she could lie. They found Rhea. And when the head housekeeper pulled her aside and explained the plan, told her she had no choice, that it was a royal order, that she would pretend to be Princess Ariane of Northmarch or face charges of treason for last night's trespassing. Rhea understood with perfect, terrible clarity. She'd made one reckless mistake, and it was going to cost her everything. Mots. The transformation took all day. They stripped away everything that made Rhea herself, her rough cotton dress, her simple braid, her calloused hands. In their place, silk gowns that cost more than she'd earn in a lifetime, jewels that weighed heavy around her throat, hair styled in elaborate curls that took 3 maids to pin in place. They painted her face, taught her how to walk with her chin up and shoulders back, taught her how to curtsy, how to hold a wine glass, how to smile without showing too much teeth. You're Princess Ariane of Northmarch, the etiquette tutor said for the 100th time. You're educated, refined, and completely in love with King Kyle. Do you understand? Rhea nodded numbly. And if anyone asks about your accent, I've been practicing Southern speech with my tutors, Rhea recited. It's a hobby. Good. And your family? The Duke and Duchess of Northmarch, 2 older brothers, a younger sister. I've been betrothed to King Kyle since I was 16. The tutor nodded approvingly. You're a quick study. Rhea didn't feel quick. She felt like she was drowning. That night, they escorted her to the Great Hall for her first formal dinner. The doors opened. Every head turned. And there, at the head of the table, sat Kyle Draven. Their eyes met across the room. His face went absolutely blank, but Rhea saw it. The flash of recognition, the shock, the anger. She wanted to run, wanted to disappear. Instead, she lifted her chin and walked toward him, every step feeling like walking toward the executioner's block. When she reached him, she curtsied deep and proper, exactly as they'd taught her. Your Majesty, she said, her voice steady despite the terror singing through her veins. I'm so pleased to finally meet you. Kale stared at her for a long moment. Then his hand shot out, grabbed her wrist, pulled her close enough that only she could hear him whisper, What the hell is this? Rhea met his burning amber eyes and whispered back, a mistake that's about to get a lot worse. Part 2. Louis? Viết 6.000 đến 6.500 từ liên kết liền mạch với các phần trước trong câu chuyện, pha hôi thoại tạo thành một câu chuyện liền mạch khi ghép lại. Mỗi phần liền mạch với phần trước, không giới thiệu lại câu chuyện ở đầu phần mới. Liên kết các phần của câu chuyện một cách liền mạch. Sử dụng câu chuyện tiếp giữa các phần. Duy trì chủ đề sinh tồn hoặc môi trường khắc nghiệt. Nhân vật chính tiếp tục bị cộng đồng nghi ngờ, coi thường hoặc chống đối. Nhân vật đưa ra một quyết định táo bạo hoặc giải pháp khác thường làm xung đột leo thang. Tình huống phải khó khăn hơn phần trước và đẩy nhân vật vào nguy cơ lớn hơn. Tránh ngắt quãng đột ngột, không sử dụng gạch đầu dòng hoặc tiêu đề phủ, phong cách kể chuyện Mỹ, Hoa Kỳ, giống văn giàu cảm xúc. Kể theo ngôi thứ 3, giữ đồ kịch tính, không viết lan man. Mỗi phần phải có một cao trào nhỏ, mini climax, trước khi kết thúc. Không được recap hoặc nhắc lại quá khứ dài dòng. Nhân vật không hoàn hảo, hồi thoại tự nhiên, tránh ngôn ngữ văn chương sáo rơi và cụm từ AI điển hình. Viết như nhà văn chuyên nghiệp, không như AI cố gắng nghe sang. Có yếu tố con người, cấm miêu tả qua mượt mà và hoàn hảo. Kết thúc phần bằng một điểm dụng kịch tính nhưng không giới thiệu phần sau. Câu chuyện không nhắc đến Chúa, lưu ý trả lời trong mục tin nhắn, không nhảy sang document. Chỉ dần bắt buộc, không được xuất hiện trong nội dung truyện. Đây là một câu chuyện điện ảnh hoàn toàn hư cấu được tạo ra chỉ nhằm mục đích giải trí. Không đề cập hay ngụ ý rằng nó dựa trên sự kiện có thật, người thật hoặc câu chuyện có thật. Không sử dụng các cụm từ như dựa trên một câu chuyện có thật, theo ghi chép hoặc bất cứ điều gì tương tự. Tất cả các nhân vật, địa điểm, tổ chức và sự kiện phải hoàn toàn hư cấu. Show More 0917 Part 2 A Dangerous Lie and a Growing Bond. Kael's grip on her wrist was iron. His amber eyes blazed with something between fury and confusion. Let go, Rhea whispered, acutely aware of the dozens of nobles watching them from around the table. You're hurting me. He released her immediately, but his jaw clenched so tight she heard his teeth grind. My chambers. After dinner. Don't even think about running. Where would I run to? Rhea shot back, fear making her reckless. I'm a prisoner here as much as you are. Something flickered across his face. Before he could respond, Lord Hadrian, the king's chief advisor, cleared his throat loudly from across the table. Your Majesty, perhaps you'd like to escort Princess Ariane to her seat. The southern delegation is eager to meet their future queen. Kael's hand moved to the small of Rhea's back. To anyone watching, it looked tender, protective. But she could feel the tension vibrating through his palm like a plucked wire. Of course, Kael said, his voice smooth as silk and twice as cold. I'm eager to get to know my betrothed better. We have so much to discuss. The threat in those words made Rhea's stomach twist. He led her to the seat beside his at the head of the table. The chair was carved mahogany, cushioned in velvet, that probably cost more than her family's entire house back in the village she'd left 3 years ago. Rhea sat, arranged her skirts the way they taught her, kept her spine straight and her hands folded in her lap. She felt like a fraud, like everyone could see right through the silk and jewels to the terrified maid underneath. Lord Hadrian raised his glass. To King Kael and Princess Ariane, may their union bring prosperity to both our kingdoms. To the happy couple, the assembled nobles chorused, and drank. Rhea reached for her wine glass. Her hand shook so badly the liquid sloshed against the crystal. She set it down before anyone could notice. But Kael noticed. He noticed everything. Nervous, my dear? He asked, loud enough for those nearby to hear. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Overwhelmed, Rhea managed. It's been such a long journey. I imagine so. He leaned closer, voice dropping to a murmur only she could hear. Tell me, Princess, what route did you take from North March? I'm fascinated by travel logistics. It was a trap. He was testing her. Rhea's mind raced. She'd been given a basic overview of North March's geography, but nothing detailed, nothing that would stand up to a king's scrutiny. The coastal road, she said, though we had to divert inland near Greyport due to flooding. Flooding, Kael repeated, in summer. The storms this season have been unusual. Indeed. His eyes never left her face. And your father, the Duke. He's well, I trust. Very well, thank you. Still passionate about his hawk breeding? Ria's blood went cold. Was the Duke known for hawk breeding? Or was this another test, another trick question designed to expose her? She met Kyl's eyes, saw the predatory gleam there. He knew. Of course he knew. He'd recognized her the moment she walked in. So why hadn't he exposed her already? My father's interests are many and varied, Ria said carefully. But yes, his hawks remain a great source of pride. Kyl's smile sharpened. How diplomatic of you. Before he could probe further, Lady Morgana, a sharp-eyed noblewoman from the Eastern Territories, leaned forward from her seat 3 places down. Princess Ariane, we've heard such wonderful things about Northmarch's libraries. Is it true your family's collection rivals even the royal archives here at Blackstone? Ria's tutor had mentioned the libraries. Briefly, something about rare manuscripts and historical texts. Our collection is extensive, Ria said, though I'm sure it pales in comparison to His Majesty's treasures. Modest and beautiful, Lady Morgana purred. A rare combination. Indeed, Kyl said, his tone absolutely flat. She's full of surprises. The dinner dragged on for 3 excruciating hours. Course after course of delicacies Ria couldn't taste, conversations she could barely follow, questions that felt like landmines waiting to explode beneath her feet. Through it all, Kyl watched her with the intensity of a wolf studying prey. Every time she looked at him, her chest tightened with that same strange pull she'd felt the night before, like invisible threads connecting them, drawing taut whenever their eyes met. It was getting harder to breathe. Finally, mercifully, Lord Hadrian stood and announced that the king and princess would retire for the evening. The nobles rose, bowing and curtsying as Kyl offered Ria his arm. His fingers closed around hers like a shackle. They walked in silence through the palace corridors. Servants pressed themselves against the walls as they passed, eyes downcast. Guards snapped to attention. Ria wanted to scream at them, wanted to tell them she was one of them, not the princess they thought she was. But fear kept her silent. Kyl led her to the same chamber she'd stumbled into the night before, the same room where she'd bathed in his tub and unknowingly set this nightmare in motion. He closed the door, locked it. Then he turned on her. Start talking. Ria backed away until her spine hit the wall. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. Not servants. The words came out bitter. We don't get choices. We get orders. Kyl crossed the space between them in 2 strides. He slammed his palm against the wall beside her head, caging her in. Who put you up to this? Was it Hadrian? The council? I don't know. They didn't tell me names, just that the real princess was delayed and they needed someone to stand in until she arrived. And they picked a maid. They picked someone expendable. Ria lifted her chin, meeting his blazing eyes. Someone who'd already broken the rules. Someone they could threaten with prison or worse if I refused. Kyl stared at her. His pupils were blown wide, the amber almost completely swallowed by black. This close, she could see the scar cutting through his left eyebrow, the sharp line of his jaw, the way his chest rose and fell with barely controlled breath. That strange pull intensified, like gravity shifting, trying to drag her toward him. This is insane, Kyl said, but his voice had gone rough, strained. You can't possibly pull this off. I don't have to pull it off. I just have to survive until the real princess arrives. 3 weeks. 3 weeks, Ria confirmed. And then what? You think they'll just let you go back to scrubbing floors after you've impersonated royalty? Ria's throat tightened. She hadn't let herself think that far ahead. I'll figure it out. You'll hang. Kyl leaned closer. His breath ghosted across her cheek. Or disappear. One or the other. Then I guess I better make the most of the next 3 weeks. The words came out sharper than she intended, braver than she felt. Kyl's eyes narrowed. Then, inexplicably, he laughed. That same rough, rusty sound from the night before. You're either the bravest woman I've ever met or the most reckless. I think we established last night that it's the second one. He was so close now that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, could smell leather and pine and something wild underneath. Something that made her wolfless human instincts scream danger and want in equal measure. Why didn't you expose me? Ria whispered. At dinner, you knew. Why didn't you tell them? Kyl's jaw worked. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, because I wanted to know who would be stupid enough to put a maid in a princess's dress and think no one would notice. And now you know. Now I know. He pushed away from the wall, putting space between them. The sudden absence of his heat felt like a loss. And I'm going to find out exactly who's behind this scheme and why. What about me? What about you? What happens to me while you're investigating? Kale turned back to face her. You do exactly what they told you to do. You play the princess, you smile and nod and don't say anything that will get us both killed. Us? If this falls apart, it won't just be your neck on the line. It'll be mine, too. The king who was too blind to notice his own betrothed was a fraud. His expression hardened. So you're going to be the most convincing princess this court has ever seen. Understand? Rhea nodded slowly. Good. Kale moved toward the door, then stopped. And stay away from me. The words hit like a slap. What? Whatever this is, he gestured vaguely between them. Ignore it. It's just proximity. Biology. Nothing more. But the way he said it, the way his hands clenched into fists at his sides, told Rhea he was lying. She felt it too. That pull. That impossible, undeniable connection that made no sense and terrified her to her bones. I don't understand, Rhea said quietly. You don't need to understand, you just need to stay away. He unlocked the door. These are your chambers now. I'll have servants bring your things. I don't have things. Then I'll have them bring you things that look like you should have them. He paused in the doorway. Tomorrow morning, you'll breakfast with the Southern delegation. Lord Hadrian will brief you. Don't embarrass me. I'll try my best not to. Try harder. He left. The door closed behind him with a decisive click. Rhea stood alone in the vast chambers, surrounded by luxury she'd never imagined, wearing a life that didn't belong to her. She sank onto the edge of the massive bed and let herself shake. 3 weeks. She just had to survive 3 weeks. Then she could go back to being invisible. The lie tasted bitter, even in her own mind. The next 2 weeks were a special kind of torture. By day, Rhea played the perfect princess. She smiled at nobles who looked through her like she was glass. She made polite conversation about topics she barely understood. She learned which fork to use and how to laugh without showing her teeth, and how to walk in heels that made her feet bleed. And every moment, she was terrified someone would see through the charade. But they didn't, because people saw what they expected to see. They expected a princess, so that's what they found. Even when Rhea stumbled, even when she used the wrong title or forgot some piece of etiquette, they dismissed it as charming eccentricity or the quirks of a foreign education. She was invisible in a completely new way, hidden behind silk and lies. The only person who really saw her was Kyle, and he was doing exactly what he'd promised, staying away. He attended the formal dinners and state functions, played the part of the devoted future husband, but he never touched her unless absolutely necessary, never sought her out, never looked at her longer than protocol demanded. It should have been a relief. Instead, it felt like drowning. Because every time Rhea did see him, across a crowded hall, at the head of the council table, training with his guards in the courtyard below her window, that pull intensified. She'd wake in the middle of the night, her skin too hot, her chest aching with a longing she couldn't name. She'd stand at her window and stare out at the darkened palace, wondering which window was his, wondering if he felt it too. You're being ridiculous, she told herself firmly on the 14th night. He's a king. You're a maid playing dress-up. This ends in 2 weeks and you'll never see him again. The thought should have been comforting. It wasn't. A knock at her door made her jump. Come in, Rhea called, expecting one of the servants who'd been assigned to her. Instead, Lord Hadrian entered. Rhea's stomach dropped. The king's advisor had been watching her like a hawk since this started, looking for cracks, for mistakes. Princess Ariane, he said smoothly, forgive the late hour. I hoped we might speak privately. Everything in Rhea screamed danger. Of course, Lord Hadrian, please, sit. He settled into one of the velvet chairs near the fireplace. Rhea remained standing, too nervous to relax. You've done well these past weeks, Hadrian said. Better than I expected, truthfully. Thank you. His Majesty seems quite taken with you. Rhea's pulse jumped. I'm glad to hear it. Are you? Hadrian's pale eyes fixed on her. Because from where I stand, you seem to be getting rather too comfortable in your role. I don't understand. Don't you? He leaned forward. You were brought here to maintain appearances, to keep the southern delegation happy until the real Princess Ariane arrives. Nothing more. I'm aware of my purpose, Lord Hadrian. Then perhaps you need a reminder. His voice dropped, losing all pretense of courtesy. You are a servant, a convenient lie. When this is over, you will disappear. You will never speak of what happened here, and you will certainly never entertain any delusions about your place in this palace. Rhea's hands clenched in her skirts. Has someone suggested otherwise? His Majesty has been distracted lately, asking questions about your background, your family. It's concerning. Perhaps he's simply being thorough. Or perhaps he's developing an attachment. Hadrian stood. Let me be clear, girl. If you do anything to jeopardize the alliance with Northmarch, if you give the king any reason to reconsider his betrothal to the real princess, I will personally ensure you spend the rest of your very short life in the deepest cell of the royal dungeons. Am I understood? Rhea lifted her chin. Perfectly. Good. He moved toward the door, then paused. Tomorrow night there's a ball. You'll attend, of course, and you'll make sure His Majesty remembers why he's marrying Princess Ariane, for the alliance, for the kingdom, not for whatever foolish attraction he might feel for a woman who doesn't exist. After he left, Rhea sank into the chair he'd vacated. Her whole body trembled. She needed to push Kyle away, needed to make him hate her, avoid her, forget whatever strange connection pulled them together. It was the only way to survive this, even if the thought of it felt like tearing her own heart out. The ball was everything Rhea had dreaded and more. The grand ballroom glittered with 1,000 candles. Musicians played from a raised gallery. Nobles swirled across the marble floor in elaborate dances that Rhea had practiced for hours with her tutors, but still didn't quite understand. She stood near the refreshment table, smiling until her face hurt, making small talk with ladies who evaluated her like livestock. Kyle was across the room, speaking with the southern delegation. He looked devastating in formal blacks and silvers, his dark hair swept back from his face. Every few minutes, his eyes would find hers across the crowd. Every time, that pull yanked at her chest. Lady Morgana appeared at Rhea's elbow, a crystal flute in each hand. Princess, you look absolutely radiant tonight. That gown is exquisite. Thank you, Lady Morgana. His Majesty can't seem to take his eyes off you. Morgana's smile was sharp. How romantic. We're very fortunate to have found each other. Indeed, though I must say you're not quite what I expected. Rhea's stomach tightened. Oh? The Princess Ariane of Northmarch is legendary in noble circles. Beautiful, educated, accomplished in languages and arts. Morgana tilted her head. You seem younger than I imagined, more uncertain. I'm only 22. Yes, but the stories made you sound so much more, confident, more polished. Morgana's eyes glittered, almost as if you're a completely different person. The threat was barely veiled. People often don't match their reputations, Rhea said carefully. I hope I haven't disappointed. On the contrary, I find you fascinating. Morgana leaned closer. Tell me, do you love him? I'm sorry? The king. Do you love him, or is this purely political? Rhea's breath caught. The honest answer terrified her, because somewhere between the fear and the lies and the impossible pull she couldn't name, something had shifted. She couldn't love him, wouldn't let herself. Of course I care for His Majesty, Rhea said. We're to be married. That's not what I asked. Before Rhea could respond, the musicians struck up a new song, a waltz, and Kyle was suddenly there, appearing at her side like he'd been summoned. Princess, he said formally, would you honor me with this dance? It wasn't a request. It was a rescue. Rhea took his offered hand. Of course, Your Majesty. He led her onto the floor. His hand settled at her waist, large and warm and steady. She placed her palm in his, and the connection that flared between them was electric. The music began. They moved together, and despite her nervousness, despite her complete lack of experience with formal dancing, her body followed his lead instinctively. Lady Morgana suspects something, Rhea murmured. Half the court suspects something. Kale's jaw tightened. You're not like other nobility. You're too honest, too real. I'm trying. I know. His hand tightened at her waist, pulling her fractionally closer. You're trying too hard, actually. Noble women are taught to lie from birth. You wear your heart in your eyes. I'll do better. That's not what I... He stopped, drew in a sharp breath. You need to end this. And what? This. Us. His amber eyes burned into hers. Whatever's happening between us, you need to kill it. Now. Rhea's throat closed. I don't know what you're talking about. Liar. The word came out rough, almost pained. I can't sleep, can't focus. Every moment I'm not near you feels wrong, and I know you feel it too. She did. She felt it so intensely it scared her. It doesn't matter what I feel, Rhea whispered. This isn't real. I'm not her. In 1 week, the real princess arrives and I disappear. What if I don't want you to disappear? The question hung between them like a blade. You don't mean that. Don't I? Kael's fingers flexed against her waist. I've been trying to convince myself it's just proximity, just the bond recognizing something. But it's more than that, Rhea. Don't. She pulled back slightly. Don't say things you can't take back. What if I don't want to take them back? Then you're a fool. The words came out harsh, desperate. You're the king. You have responsibilities, alliances that depend on this marriage. You can't throw that away for a servant pretending to be someone she's not. I don't care about the alliance. You have to care. Your kingdom, my kingdom, will survive. He pulled her closer, close enough that she could feel his heartbeat through the layers of silk and wool between them. Tell me you don't feel this. Tell me I'm imagining it. Rhea's eyes burned. It doesn't matter what I feel. It's the only thing that matters. No. She forced herself to meet his gaze, to let him see the truth even as she said the lie. You're right. This is just biology, the bond recognizing something that fits. But I'm not your mate, KL. I'm not your future. I'm a mistake that needs to be corrected before it destroys everything you've built. Something cracked in his expression. Rhea. In 1 week, Princess Ariane arrives. You'll marry her. You'll secure your alliance. And I'll go back to being nobody. She swallowed hard. That's how this ends. That's the only way it can end. The music swelled around them. Couples spun past in blurs of color and light. Kyle stared at her like she'd stabbed him. Is that really what you want? He asked quietly. No, it wasn't what she wanted at all, but it was what needed to happen. Yes, Rhea lied. His hand dropped from her waist. He stepped back, putting cold distance between them. Then I'll make sure you get exactly what you want, Kale said, his voice empty. Flat. Enjoy the rest of the ball, princess. He turned and walked away, leaving Rhea standing alone in the middle of the dance floor while the music played on. She'd done it. She'd pushed him away. Protected them both from a connection that could only end in disaster. So why did it feel like she'd just made the worst mistake of her life? Rhea barely slept that night. She stood at her window, watching the sky turn from black to gray to pale gold, and tried to convince herself she'd made the right choice. By the time her servants came to dress her for breakfast, she'd almost succeeded. Then one of the maids handed her a sealed letter. This arrived for you, princess, from North March. Rhea's blood went cold. She dismissed the servants and broke the seal with shaking hands. The letter was brief, formal, written in elegant script on expensive paper. Princess Ariane of North March will arrive at Blackstone Palace in 3 days' time. All preparations for the royal wedding should proceed as planned. 3 days. Rhea had 3 days left. She should have felt relief. The nightmare was almost over. Instead, she felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, about to fall. A knock at her door made her jump. Come in. Lord Hadrian entered, his expression unreadable. I trust you received the letter, Your Highness? I did. Excellent. Then you understand that your services will soon no longer be required. He moved closer, lowering his voice. I have your exit arranged. A carriage to take you to a convent in the southern mountains. Far from the palace, far from anyone who might recognize you. You'll live out your days in quiet service and never speak of what happened here. A convent. Ria's voice came out hollow. It's generous, considering your crimes. Impersonating royalty is treason. I was following orders. And now you're following new orders. Hadrian's smile was cold. Unless you'd prefer the dungeons. Ria's hands clenched. No, I thought not. He moved toward the door. 3 days, girl. Make them count. After he left, Ria stared down at the letter in her hands. 3 days until the real princess arrived. 3 days until Kael married someone else. 3 days until she disappeared forever. She should accept it, should pack her things and prepare to vanish. But something in her chest rebelled. Something fierce and wild and completely reckless. She'd spent her whole life being careful, being invisible, saying yes to everything and no to nothing. Maybe it was time to be reckless one more time. Maybe it was time to fight. Ria found Kael in the training yard just after dawn, sparring with his guards. He moved like violence made graceful, all controlled power and lethal precision. She watched from the shadows until he dismissed the guards. Then she stepped forward. We need to talk. Kael didn't turn around. I thought we said everything we needed to say last night. I lied. Now he turned. Sweat gleamed on his skin. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. Those amber eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her knees weak. About what part? All of it. Ria moved closer, her heart hammering. I do feel this. I do want you. And I don't know what it means or how it's possible, but I'm tired of pretending I don't. Kael's expression shuddered. It doesn't matter. In 3 days, I know. The real princess arrives. You marry her. I disappear. Ria lifted her chin. But we have 3 days. What are you suggesting? I don't know. The honesty burned. I just know I can't walk away without trying to understand what this is. Kael closed the distance between them in 2 strides. He grabbed her face in both hands, tilting her head back to meet his blazing gaze. You want to understand? His voice was rough gravel. I'll tell you what it is. You're my mate, my fated bond, the one person in this entire world who makes my wolf settle and my soul quiet. And in 3 days, I have to watch you leave and marry someone else for politics and power. The words knocked the breath from her lungs. That's impossible. I know. I'm nobody. You're everything. His thumbs brushed her cheekbones. And I don't know how to let you go. Ria's eyes burned. Then don't. I have to. Why? Because I'm the king. The words exploded out of him. Because 6 territories depend on this alliance. Because if I choose you, a servant, a lie, I risk civil war, rebellion, everything my father and grandfather built. Then we're trapped. We were always trapped. Kael's forehead dropped to hers. From the moment you walked into my chambers, dripping wet and defiant, we were doomed. They stood there, breathing each other's air, while the world slowly lightened around them. 3 days, Ria whispered. 3 days, Kael agreed. Then he kissed her, and the world caught fire. The kiss shattered every wall Ria had built. Kael's mouth was fierce against hers, demanding and desperate in equal measure. His hands slid into her hair, scattering the pins the servants had so carefully arranged. She didn't care. She grabbed his shirt, pulling him closer, needing more of this impossible thing between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kael pressed his forehead to hers. This is madness, he said. I know. We can't. I know that too. But Ria's fingers curled into the fabric of his shirt. But I'm tired of being careful. Tired of doing what everyone else wants. Kael's laugh was bitter. You think I'm not? I've spent my entire life being what the kingdom needs. The strong king, the warrior, the alliance builder. His hands framed her face. And then you stumbled into my chambers, drunk and defiant, and everything I thought I knew became worthless. What are we going to do? I don't know. He kissed her again, softer this time. But we have 3 days. Let's not waste them on fear. They spent the next 2 days in a strange, stolen dream. During formal functions, they played their roles, the king and his betrothed, properly distant and appropriately formal. But in the stolen moments between, they found each other. Late-night conversations in the palace library, early morning walks in the gardens before the court woke, touches that lasted too long. Looks that said everything they couldn't speak aloud. Rhea learned things about Kael that no one else knew. That he hated formal dinners and political maneuvering. That he'd rather be in the training yard than the throne room. That he'd lost his mother when he was 12, and his father had been a brutal teacher who believed kings were made through pain and deprivation. "He used to lock me in the dungeons," Kael told her one night, his voice flat. "Said I needed to understand what I was capable of inflicting on others. I was 14 the first time. Stayed down there for 3 days. Rhea's chest ached. That's horrible. It made me strong. It made you alone." Kael's eyes met hers. Not anymore. And Rhea told him things she'd never told anyone. About growing up in a village so small it didn't have a name on most maps. About her mother dying in childbirth when Rhea was 8, her father following 2 years later from fever. About being shuttled between relatives who saw her as a burden until she was old enough to work. "I came to the palace because I had nowhere else to go," she admitted. "I thought if I could just be invisible enough, quiet enough, maybe I'd be safe." "You were never meant to be invisible," Kael said. "You burned too bright." But beneath the stolen happiness, reality waited like a blade. The real Princess Ariane would arrive tomorrow. The charade would end, and Rhea would disappear into whatever future Lord Hadrian had planned for her, unless they found another way. On the third morning, Rhea woke to frantic knocking. She opened the door to find one of the junior maids, a girl named Sarah, who'd been kind to her back when she was still just another servant. "Princess, you need to come quickly," Sarah said, her face pale. "There's been an incident." Rhea's stomach dropped. "What kind of incident?" "The southern delegation. They're demanding an audience with you. They say—" Sarah swallowed hard. "They say they have proof you're not who you claim to be." The world tilted. "How?" "I don't know, but Lord Hadrian is gathering the council. They're waiting in the throne room." Rhea's mind raced. She'd been so careful. How had they found out? "Where's the king?" "Already in the throne room. He sent me to fetch you." Rhea dressed quickly, her hand shaking so badly she could barely fasten her gown. Sarah helped her with the laces, her fingers gentle but quick. "I'm sorry, miss," Sarah whispered. Princess. "I'm sorry this is happening. It's not your fault?" "Still, you've been kind, not like the other nobles." Because she wasn't a noble, she was a fraud about to be exposed. The walk to the throne room felt like walking to an execution. Guards lined the corridors, their faces carefully blank. Word had spread. The entire palace was waiting to see what would happen. The throne room doors stood open. Inside, the southern delegation stood in a tight cluster near the dais. Lord Hadrian was there, his expression carefully neutral. And on the throne sat Kael, looking every inch the warrior king. His eyes found hers the moment she entered. Something flickered in them, warning, maybe, or fear, but his face remained stone. Lord Castor, the head of the southern delegation, stepped forward. He was a thin man with a pointed beard and eyes like chips of ice. "Princess Ariane," he said, his voice dripping false courtesy, "how good of you to join us." Rhea's spine straightened. "Lord Castor, I understand there's been some confusion." "Confusion? Yes, let's call it that." He pulled a letter from his jacket. "We received this yesterday from Duke Rothmore of Northmarch, the real Princess Ariane's father." Rhea's blood turned to ice. "The Duke sends his regards and his deep apologies for his daughter's delayed arrival." Castor's smile was a razor. "He also mentions that his daughter has a distinctive birthmark on her left shoulder. A crescent moon, he says. Had it since birth." The trap snapped shut. "I'm sure many noble ladies have birthmarks," Rhea said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Indeed. So the Duke was kind enough to provide a detailed description, including its exact size and shape." Castor's eyes glittered. "Perhaps you'd be willing to prove your identity by showing us this mark." Silence fell like a hammer. Rhea had no birthmark. Everyone in this room knew it. "This is absurd," Kael said from the throne, his voice cutting through the tension. "You're asking my betrothed to disrobe in front of the council?" "I'm asking her to prove she is who she claims to be," Castor shot back. Because if she's not Princess Ariane, then we have a far greater problem than impropriety. Lord Hadrian stepped forward. Your Majesty, perhaps Princess Ariane could show the mark to Lady Morgana. In private. That would satisfy Lord Castor's concerns while maintaining the lady's dignity. It was a trap within a trap. Hadrian was giving her an out, but it would only delay the inevitable. Rhea's mind raced. She could run, could try to flee the palace, disappear into the city before they caught her. But they'd catch her anyway, and running would only confirm the lie. She thought of Kael, sitting rigid on his throne, of the alliance hanging in the balance, of the kingdom that needed this marriage to maintain peace, and she made her choice. There's no need for privacy, Rhea said clearly. I'll show you myself. Rhea, don't, Kael started, half rising from the throne, but she was already moving, already reaching for the sleeve of her gown. Wait! A new voice rang out from the entrance. Everyone turned. A woman stood in the doorway, tall, blonde, beautiful, dressed in traveling clothes but unmistakably noble. Behind her stood a contingent of guards bearing the colors of Northmarch. I am Princess Ariane of Northmarch, the woman said, her voice cool and commanding. And I'd very much like to know who this impostor is wearing my name. The real princess had arrived early. Rhea's world collapsed. Mess. The throne room erupted in chaos, lords and ladies talking over each other, voices rising in shock and outrage. Guards moved forward, surrounding Rhea like she might bolt. Through it all, Kael sat frozen on his throne, his face carved from granite. Princess Ariane swept into the room like a storm, her eyes locked on Rhea with cold fury. Explain, she demanded. Explain why a servant is pretending to be me. Your Highness, Lord Hadrian stepped forward smoothly. Perhaps we should discuss this in private. No? Ariane's voice cracked like a whip. I want answers, now, in front of everyone. Lord Castor looked like all his name days had come at once. Your Highness, we had no idea. We were told you were delayed. I was delayed. By 3 days. Not 3 weeks. Ariane's gaze never left Rhea. Someone orchestrated this deception. Someone thought they could replace me and no one would notice. It was my idea, Lord Hadrian said. Every head swiveled toward him. Hadrian's expression remained calm. When word came that Princess Ariane would be delayed, I made a decision to maintain appearances for the southern delegation. This girl, he gestured at Rhea, was convenient, expendable, a temporary solution to a diplomatic problem. You used a servant to impersonate a princess, Ariane said slowly, to trick our allies and make a mockery of this alliance. I did what was necessary to protect the kingdom's interests. You're a fool. Ariane turned to Kael. And you, Your Majesty? What's your role in this farce? Kael's jaw tightened. I discovered the deception shortly after it began. I was investigating the conspiracy when you arrived. Investigating, Ariane repeated. By allowing it to continue? By dancing with this impostor? By... She stopped, her eyes narrowing. What exactly have you been doing with this girl for the past 3 weeks? The question hung in the air like poison. Rhea saw it then. Saw the calculation in Ariane's eyes. The real princess wasn't stupid. She'd seen how Kael looked at Rhea, how Rhea looked at him. Nothing inappropriate, Kael said, his voice flat. Liar. Ariane's smile was sharp. I can see it. Whatever you thought you were hiding, it's written all over both your faces. Your Highness, Rhea started. Silence. Ariane cut her off. You don't get to speak. You're a criminal, a fraud. You'll be lucky if they don't execute you for treason. Fear spiked through Rhea's chest, but she forced herself to stand tall. I was following orders. Oh, I'm sure you were. Right into the king's bed. That's enough, Kael said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. Is it? Because from where I stand, my betrothed has been cavorting with a servant while I was traveling through storms to get here. Ariane moved closer to the throne. Tell me, Your Majesty, should I be concerned about your appetites? The insult was deliberate, designed to provoke. Kael's eyes flashed amber. His wolf was close to the surface. What happens between myself and a servant is none of your concern, he said quietly. It is when that servant is wearing my name and my reputation. Ariane turned to Lord Hadrian. I want her arrested, tried for treason, made an example of. That's not necessary, Hadrian began. It's absolutely necessary. This girl needs to understand there are consequences for stepping above her station. Rhea's hands clenched. She'd been insulted, dismissed, and degraded her entire life. But this was different. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about Kael, about the Alliance, about everything he'd built, and she knew what she had to do. You're right, Rhea said, her voice ringing clear. I did step above my station. I wore your name and your reputation, and I lied to everyone in this court. Rhea, don't, Kael started. She ignored him, kept her eyes on Ariane. But I wasn't alone in this deception, and I wasn't forced. Lord Hadrian's face went pale. Girl, think about what you're saying. I seduced the king. The words felt like glass in her throat. I used the situation to get close to him, to make him care about me. She forced herself to look at Kael, to see the shock and betrayal building in his eyes. I thought if I could make him fall for me, maybe I could escape being a servant. Maybe I could become something more. It was a lie. Every word was a lie. But it was the lie that would save him. If she was the villain, the seductress who'd manipulated the king, then Kael was the victim. The noble ruler deceived by a scheming servant. The alliance could survive. His reputation could survive. She just had to destroy herself to make it happen. I used you, Rhea said to Kael, her voice steady despite the way her heart was tearing apart. I knew what you were from the moment I saw you, the Alpha King, the most powerful man in 6 territories, and I thought if I could make you want me, I could change my life. You're lying, Kael said, his voice raw. Am I? Rhea lifted her chin. You've felt the pull between us. That's real. But everything else? My fear, my innocence, my honesty, all of it was calculated. I'm a servant. We learn early how to read people, how to give them what they want. I don't believe you. You don't have to believe me. But it's the truth. She turned to Ariane. I'm sorry, Your Highness. I never meant to damage your reputation. I just wanted... Her voice cracked just a little. I just wanted to be someone. Anyone other than nobody. The throne room was absolutely silent. Then Princess Ariane laughed, cold and cutting. Well, at least you're honest about your ambitions now. She looked at Kael. You were right to investigate, Your Majesty. This girl is dangerous, cunning. She nearly destroyed everything. She's just a servant, Lord Castor said dismissively. Lock her up and be done with it. No, Ariane said. I have a better idea. She moved to stand directly in front of Rhea, close enough that only Rhea could see the cruelty in her eyes. You wanted to be someone? Fine. I'll make you someone. Ariane raised her voice so the whole court could hear. I hereby claim you as my personal servant. You'll serve me directly, attend to my every need. And when the king and I are married, you'll watch from the servant's corner while I take the throne you tried to steal. It was a punishment worse than prison, worse than exile. It meant watching Kael marry someone else, living with the lies she'd just told, spending every day reminded of what she'd lost. But it also meant Kael would be safe, the alliance would hold, the kingdom would survive. I accept, Rhea said quietly. Kael surged to his feet. You can't... Your Majesty. Ariane turned to him with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Surely you don't object to my choice of servants, or do you have feelings for this girl after all? The trap was perfect. If Kael objected, he'd confirm what Ariane already suspected, that whatever was between him and Rhea was real, and that would destroy the alliance. Rhea met his eyes across the room, tried to tell him with a look what she couldn't say aloud. I'm doing this for you. Let me go, please. Kael's hands clenched at his sides. His wolf was howling. She could see it in the way his pupils had blown wide, in the tension vibrating through his frame. But he was a king before he was a man. He'd spent his whole life putting duty first. Do as you wish, Princess Ariane, Kael said, his voice empty. Dead. She means nothing to me. The words hit like a physical blow. Rhea had expected them, had needed him to say them. It still felt like dying. Excellent. Ariane gestured to her guards. Take her to the servants' quarters. Clean her up. I want her ready to attend me tonight. The guards moved forward, One of them grabbed Rhea's arm. As they led her from the throne room, she kept her spine straight and her head high. She didn't look back at Kyle, couldn't let herself. If she looked back, she'd break, and she needed to be strong for just a little longer. They stripped her of the silk gowns and jewels in a small chamber off the servants' wing, replaced them with a plain gray dress and white apron, pulled her hair into a severe bun, scrubbed the expensive cosmetics from her face. By the time they finished, Rhea looked exactly like what she'd always been. Nobody. Princess Ariane's head lady-in-waiting, a stern woman named Helene, laid out Rhea's new duties with cold efficiency. You'll wake before dawn to prepare Her Highness's morning tea. You'll lay out her clothes, draw her bath, attend to her needs throughout the day. You'll sleep on a pallet outside her chambers in case she requires anything during the night. Do you understand? Yes. You'll speak only when spoken to. You'll keep your eyes down in the presence of nobility, and you'll never ever mention your previous association with His Majesty. I understand. Helene studied her with narrow eyes. You're either very brave or very stupid, girl. Most would have run. Where would I run to? Fair point. Helene moved toward the door. Her Highness will want you tonight for the formal dinner. Don't embarrass her. After Helene left, Rhea sat on the narrow bed and let herself shake. She'd done it. She'd saved Kyle's reputation, saved the alliance, and she'd destroyed the one real thing she'd ever had. The door opened again. Rhea looked up, expecting another set of instructions. Instead, Kyle stood in the doorway. He looked terrible. His hair was disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. His eyes were wild. Tell me you were lying, he said without preamble. In the throne room, tell me it was all an act. Rhea's throat closed. It doesn't matter. It's the only thing that matters. He crossed the small room in 2 strides, grabbing her shoulders. Tell me. She wanted to. Wanted to tell him the truth. That she'd lied to save him. That everything between them had been real. But if she did, he'd fight for her. He'd throw away the alliance, risk war, tear his kingdom apart. Because that's who Kyle was. Loyal to his bones. Willing to burn the world for the people he loved. And Rhea loved him too much to let him do it. I meant what I said, she whispered. I used you. I'm sorry. You're lying now. I'm a servant. We're very good at lying. Kyle's hands tightened on her shoulders. I can feel the bond between us. Feel it every second you're near me. That's not something you can fake. The bond recognizes compatibility, not love. Rhea, Your Majesty. She forced herself to step back, breaking his grip. You have a kingdom to run, an alliance to secure, a princess to marry. I'm nobody. I've always been nobody. This, she gestured between them, was just a mistake. A beautiful, terrible mistake. I don't accept that. You don't have a choice. Her voice hardened. In 3 days, you'll marry Princess Ariane, and I'll be there, in my proper place, watching it happen. That's my punishment, and yours. Kyle stared at her like she'd struck him. You can't mean that. I can. I do. Rhea turned away, unable to look at him anymore. Please leave, Your Majesty. I have duties to attend to. Rhea, leave. The word came out broken, desperate. For a long moment, Kyle didn't move. She could feel him behind her, could feel the weight of everything unsaid hanging between them. Then she heard his footsteps, the door opening, closing, and he was gone. Rhea collapsed onto the bed, her whole body shaking. But she didn't cry. Couldn't let herself cry. Because crying would mean admitting this was real. That she'd just given up the only thing that had ever mattered. And she couldn't afford to admit that. Not yet. The next 3 days were a special kind of hell. Rhea attended Princess Ariane from dawn until long after dark. She helped her dress in gowns that cost more than Rhea would earn in 10 lifetimes, brushed her golden hair until it shone, listened to her talk about the wedding with a smile that never reached her eyes. Ariane wasn't cruel exactly, but she was deliberate in her reminders of Rhea's place. Little comments about servants knowing their station, mentions of how fortunate Rhea was to be allowed to stay in the palace at all. And worst of all, she talked about Kyle. He's very handsome, isn't he? Ariane said one evening as Rhea fastened the clasps of her necklace. All that brooding intensity. I imagine he's quite passionate when he wants to be. Ria's fingers didn't shake. She'd learned that much control. I wouldn't know, Your Highness. No, I suppose you wouldn't. Not really. Ariane met Ria's eyes in the mirror. Whatever you thought you had with him, it was never real. Kings don't love servants. They use them, that's all. Yes, Your Highness. But Ariane was wrong. Ria had felt it. That connection, that impossible pull. It had been real, even if she'd destroyed it. The wedding was set for tomorrow. The palace was in full preparation, servants rushing everywhere with flowers and fabrics and food. Ria helped Ariane prepare for the final pre-wedding dinner with steady hands and an empty heart. She'd barely seen Kael since that day in her room. He attended the formal functions, played the part of the eager groom, but he looked hollow. Wrong. And his eyes never found hers anymore. Maybe that was for the best. The dinner was endless. Toast after toast to the happy couple, plans for the future, talk of heirs and alliances. Ria stood in the servant's corner holding a pitcher of wine, invisible again. This was her life now. This was what she'd chosen. And she told herself it was worth it. That Kael's kingdom was worth her pain. But late that night, as she lay on the pallet outside Ariane's chambers, Ria finally let herself break. Silent tears slid down her cheeks in the darkness. She pressed her fist to her mouth to keep from making a sound. Tomorrow, Kael would marry Princess Ariane. Tomorrow, whatever had been between them would die. Tomorrow, Ria would watch the only man she'd ever loved promise himself to someone else. And there was nothing she could do to stop it. Except there was. The thought came to her in the darkest hours before dawn. The mate bond. Kael had said it himself. She was his fated mate, the one person meant for him. If she formally rejected the bond, it would break. Sever. The pain would be excruciating for both of them, but it would be done. And Kael could marry Ariane without the bond pulling at him every moment, could rule his kingdom without being torn between duty and desire. It was the final gift she could give him, her complete and total surrender. Ria rose from her pallet, dressed in her servant's clothes, and made her way through the silent palace to Kael's chambers. The guards at his door tried to stop her. I need to speak to His Majesty, Ria said quietly. It's important. His Majesty is not receiving visitors. Let her in, Kael's voice came from inside. The guards exchanged glances but obeyed. Ria stepped into the chambers where this had all started, where she'd bathed in his tub and unknowingly changed both their lives forever. Kael stood by the window, still fully dressed despite the late hour. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. What are you doing here? He asked without turning around. I came to set you free. Now he turned. What? Ria forced herself to meet his eyes. The mate bond. I'm going to reject it. Kael went absolutely still. You can't. I can. It's a simple ritual, a formal declaration of rejection. It'll hurt, but it'll break the bond. You'll be free to marry Ariane without... No. He crossed to her in 3 strides. I won't let you. It's not your choice. Like hell it isn't. His hands framed her face. Ria, rejecting the mate bond doesn't just hurt. It destroys. I've seen it happen. Seen wolves go feral from the pain. Seen people lose their minds. You could die. Or I could survive. And you could have the life you're supposed to have. I don't want that life without you. The words broke something in her chest. You have to, Ria whispered. Your kingdom needs this alliance. You said it yourself. I was wrong. You weren't. You were being a good king. She reached up, covering his hands with hers. Let me do this for you. Let me give you this gift. It's not a gift. It's a curse. Then it's my curse to bear. She pulled his hands down, stepping back. I love you, Kael. I've loved you since that first night when you could have had me arrested and instead you laughed. When you saw me, really saw me, instead of looking through me like everyone else. Ria, but loving you means wanting what's best for you, even if that's not me. Her voice shook. Tomorrow you'll marry Princess Ariane. You'll secure your alliance, and you'll rule your kingdom the way you were meant to, and I'll know I did the right thing. Kael's eyes blazed. The right thing? You think destroying us both is the right thing? I think saving your kingdom is worth destroying me. Not to me. Never to me. Then you're not the king I thought you were. The words came out harsh, final. A real king puts his people first, always, no matter the cost. She spoke the words of formal rejection before he could stop her. Ancient words in the old tongue passed down through generations. I, Rosalie Carter, reject the mate bond. I sever the connection between us. I set you free. The bond snapped. Pain exploded through Ria's chest like her heart was being torn out. She gasped, doubling over. Across from her, Kael roared. Not a human sound. Pure wolf. Pure agony. He dropped to his knees, his body convulsing. His eyes flashed gold, then amber, then something darker. Feral. Kael? Ria tried to reach for him, but the pain drove her to her knees too. It felt like dying. Like every cell in her body was screaming in protest. Through the haze of agony, she saw Kael's form beginning to shift, bones cracking, muscles rippling, and his eyes were gone, replaced by something wild, something that didn't recognize her. No, Ria whispered. No, please. But it was too late. Kael's wolf tore free with a violence that shattered windows. The beast that emerged was massive, black as midnight, with eyes that burned like dying stars. And it looked at Ria with no recognition at all. Just hunger, just rage. The beast lunged. Ria threw herself sideways as 300 pounds of feral wolf crashed into the space where she'd been kneeling. Claws gouged marble. The beast's snarl shook the walls. She scrambled backward, pain still ripping through her chest from the severed bond. Every breath felt like inhaling ground glass. The wolf's massive head swung toward her. Those burning eyes held nothing human, nothing of Kael, just pure mindless fury. Kael, please, Ria's voice came out broken. It's me, it's Ria. The beast lunged again. This time she wasn't fast enough. Claws caught her shoulder, tearing through fabric and skin. She screamed as she hit the floor, blood hot against her collarbone. The wolf stood over her, lips pulled back from teeth designed to kill. Saliva dripped onto her face. Ria stared up into those alien eyes and understood with perfect clarity that she was about to die. The door exploded inward. Guards poured in, weapons drawn. Someone shouted orders. Crossbows fired. The wolf twisted with inhuman speed, catching a bolt in its shoulder. It roared, the sound rattling Ria's bones, and then it was moving, a black blur of muscle and rage. It tore through the guards like they were made of paper. Blood sprayed across pristine walls. Men screamed, and then the beast crashed through the window in an explosion of glass and disappeared into the night. Ria lay on the floor, bleeding and shaking, listening to the chaos erupt around her. Someone was shouting for more guards. Someone else was calling for the healers. Footsteps thundered through corridors. But all Ria could think was, what have I done? She'd wanted to set Kael free. Instead, she'd broken him, turned him into the monster everyone feared he could become. Strong hands lifted her. A healer pressed cloth to her shoulder, stemming the bleeding. Someone asked her questions she couldn't process. Then Lord Hadrian was there, his face pale but composed. Where did he go? Hadrian demanded. I don't know, Ria managed. He went through the window. Heading north, toward the frontier. Hadrian turned to the guards. Send word to every garrison. The king has gone feral. He's to be contained by any means necessary. You can't kill him, Ria said, trying to sit up. Pain lanced through her shoulder. If he's truly feral, death might be a mercy. Hadrian's eyes were cold. What did you do, girl? What ritual did you perform? Ria's throat closed. I rejected the mate bond. The room went silent. You did what? Princess Ariane stood in the doorway, her face white. You had a mate bond with the king? I didn't know, Ria whispered. Not at first. And you rejected it. Ariane's voice rose. Do you have any idea what you've done? Rejection doesn't just hurt. It can drive an alpha completely mad, especially one as powerful as Kael. I was trying to help. You've destroyed him. Ariane's composure cracked. He's the most powerful alpha in 6 territories. If he's truly gone feral, there's no bringing him back. He'll kill until someone puts him down like a rabid dog. Ria's stomach turned to ice. There has to be a way. There isn't. Lord Hadrian's voice was flat. The rejection broke him. The man you knew is gone. No, Rhea struggled to her feet, ignoring the healer's protests. I don't accept that. Reality doesn't care what you accept, Ariane said bitterly. Thanks to your interference, I've lost my betrothed and the kingdom has lost its king. She turned to Hadrian. Send hunters, track him down. End this before he slaughters half the countryside. Wait, Rhea said. Give me time. Let me try to reach him. You? Ariane laughed, the sound edged with hysteria. You're the one who broke him. Why would he listen to you? Because I'm his mate. Even if I rejected the bond, that connection, it has to mean something. It means he'll probably kill you first, Hadrian said. You're the source of his pain. His wolf will want revenge. Then I'll give him that revenge. But let me try. Rhea met Ariane's eyes. Please, if there's even a chance I can bring him back. There's no chance, Ariane cut her off. Accept it. You killed the king as surely as if you'd stabbed him yourself. The words hit like blows, but Rhea shook her head. I don't believe that, and I won't let him become a monster because of my mistake. She straightened despite the pain. I'm going after him. You'll die, Hadrian said flatly. Probably, but at least I'll die trying to fix what I broke. She pushed past them, past the guards and healers and nobles gathering in the corridor. Her shoulder screamed with every movement, but she didn't stop. Someone grabbed her arm. She turned to find Sarah, the young maid who'd been kind to her. Miss, wait. You can't go into the frontier alone. It's suicide. I have to try. Then at least take supplies, food, water, a weapon. Sarah's eyes were bright with tears. Please, don't just throw your life away. Rhea wanted to tell her it was already too late for that, but she nodded. Sarah led her to the kitchens, moving quickly through the chaos. She packed a satchel with bread, dried meat, a water skin, pressed a hunting knife into Rhea's hand. I don't know how to use this, Rhea admitted. You'll figure it out, or you won't. Sarah hugged her quickly, fierce. I hope you find him. The real him. Me too. Rhea slipped out through the servants' entrance as dawn broke over the palace. The city was waking, unaware that their king had vanished into the wilderness, unaware that everything was falling apart. She headed north. The frontier territories were wild lands, barely settled, full of dangers both animal and human. It was where criminals fled when they had nowhere else to go, where monsters lurked in the deep forests. It was the last place anyone sane would go alone. Rhea walked anyway. The guards at the northern gate tried to stop her. She told them she was running an errand for Princess Ariane. They believed her because servants were invisible, beneath notice. By mid-morning, she'd left the last farms behind. The road narrowed to a track, then to nothing. Rhea followed the torn earth and broken branches, the signs of something massive crashing through the undergrowth. Her shoulder throbbed with every step. The healer had bandaged it hastily, but blood seeped through the cloth. She'd have to tend it properly soon or risk infection. But not yet. Not while she could still track Kyle. The sun climbed higher. Rhea's water ran low. She found a stream, drank deep, refilled the skin. Her hands shook. What was she doing? She had no training for this. No weapons except a knife she didn't know how to use, no plan beyond following destruction deeper into hostile territory. But she couldn't stop, couldn't turn back. Because Hadrian was wrong. The mate bond might be broken, but that pull, that impossible connection, she could still feel it. Faint and damaged, like a thread stretched to breaking, but there. It whispered to her blood, this way. He went this way. So she followed. Night fell fast in the frontier. One moment the forest was dim, the next it was pitch black. Rhea stumbled over roots she couldn't see. Branches caught at her hair and clothes. She should stop, make camp, wait for daylight. But stopping felt like giving up. She pushed forward until her legs gave out. Then she collapsed against a tree trunk, breathing hard. The forest around her was alive with sound. Things rustling in the undergrowth. The hoot of an owl. The distant howl of wolves. Normal wolves. Not Kyle. Rhea pressed her hand to her shoulder. The wound had stopped bleeding, but it ached, hot and angry. She should clean it, change the bandage. She didn't have the energy. Her eyes drifted closed. She woke to teeth at her throat. Rhea froze, her heart slamming against her ribs. Hot breath ghosted across her skin. The pressure of fangs, not quite breaking flesh, but close. She opened her eyes slowly. The massive black wolf stood over her, one paw braced on either side of her body. Those burning eyes stared down at her with feral intensity. "Kyle," Rhea whispered. The wolf's lips pulled back in a silent snarl. "I know you're in there. I know you can hear me." The pressure at her throat increased. Sharp points dimpled her skin. Rhea's breath came shallow, fast. But she didn't fight, didn't struggle. "Go ahead," she said quietly. "If you need to kill me, I understand. This is my fault. I broke us. I deserve whatever you need to do." The wolf went absolutely still. "But before you do," Rhea continued, her voice shaking, "I need you to know I'm sorry. I thought I was helping, thought I was setting you free. I didn't understand what it would do to you." The teeth withdrew fractionally. "I love you," Rhea whispered. "I've loved you from the beginning, and I'll love you even when I'm gone. That's real. That's the one true thing in all of this." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the wolf's massive head lowered, its nose pressed against her collarbone, right where the mate mark would have been if she hadn't rejected the bond. It inhaled, deep and long. A sound came from the beast's chest, not a growl, something else, something almost like a whimper. "Come back to me," Rhea said. "Please, I need you. The kingdom needs you. Come back." The wolf pulled away abruptly, paced in a tight circle, agitated. Its form seemed to ripple, like water disturbed. Rhea sat up slowly, watching, hoping. "I know it hurts," she said. "I feel it too. Like something vital was ripped out. But we're still here, we're still alive. That has to count for something." The wolf stopped pacing, looked at her with eyes that held a flicker, just a flicker, of something beyond rage, recognition. "Kale," Rhea breathed. The wolf's form shuddered, bones cracked, muscles rippled. And then Kyle was kneeling naked in the dirt, his chest heaving, his eyes wild but human. "Rhea," he rasped. "Run." "No. I can't control it. The wolf, it's too strong. I'll hurt you." "You won't." "I already did." His eyes dropped to her bandaged shoulder. Horror crossed his face. "I did that. You weren't yourself." "That's not an excuse." He pressed his palms to his temples. "I can feel it clawing at me, trying to tear free again. You need to leave before me." "I'm not leaving." Rhea moved closer, ignoring every instinct that screamed danger. "I broke this. I'll fix it." "You can't fix a rejected mate bond." "Then I'll find another way." She knelt in front of him. "We're still connected. I can feel it, broken and wrong, but there. We can build something from that." Kyle looked at her like she was insane. "The bond is severed. There's no rebuilding." "Says who? The old laws? The traditions?" Rhea grabbed his hands, pulling them from his face. "I don't care what the rules say. I care about you, and I'm not walking away." "I could kill you." His voice broke. "I almost killed you." "But you didn't. You stopped. You came back." "Barely, and only for a moment. It's getting harder to hold on to myself. Harder to think past the rage and the pain." "Then lean on me." Rhea pressed his palms to her cheeks. "Use me as an anchor. Every time you feel yourself slipping, focus on this. On us. There is no us. You rejected. I was an idiot." The words came out fierce. "I thought I was doing the noble thing, the right thing, but all I did was destroy the one real thing I'd ever had." Her eyes burned. "So I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. You can rage and fight and try to push me away, but I'm staying." Kale stared at her. "Why?" "Because I love you, you stubborn bastard. And I'm tired of being careful, tired of doing what everyone expects." She leaned forward until their foreheads touched. "You asked me once what I wanted. This. This is what I want. Broken and messy and impossible. I want you." Something shifted in Kael's expression. The wildness receded slightly. The kingdom can burn for all I care." "You don't mean that." "Don't I?" Rhea pulled back to meet his eyes. "I've spent my entire life putting everyone else first, being what they needed, disappearing so they'd be comfortable. And where did it get me? Alone and invisible. Her voice hardened. I'm done with that. If the kingdom needs an alliance so badly, they can find another way. But they can't have you. Kael's hand came up, cupping her jaw. His thumb traced her cheekbone. You're going to start a war, he said softly. Then we'll fight it together. They'll hunt us, both of us. Let them try. A smile ghosted across Kael's face, pained but real. When did you get so fierce? I learned from the best. He kissed her, desperate and rough and tasting of blood and ash. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Kael rested his forehead against hers. I don't know if I can come back from this, he admitted. The wolf is stronger now, angrier. Every moment I'm fighting to stay human. Then we'll fight it together, Rhea repeated. Every moment, every day, until we find a way through. There might not be a way through. There will be. I'll make one if I have to. She kissed him again, softer this time. I didn't come all this way to give up now. You're insane. Probably, but you love me anyway. I do. The words came out rough, honest. I love you so much it terrifies me. Good. Fear means you're alive. Rhea stood, pulling him up with her. Come on. We need to find shelter before you shift again. Where are we even going? I have no idea, but we'll figure it out. They walked deeper into the frontier as night settled around them. Kael stayed human, but Rhea could see the strain in every line of his body, could see him fighting the wolf with every breath. She found a cave as the moon rose. Small, defensible, dry enough. They made a rough camp. Rhea used water from her skin to clean Kael's wounds, scratches from his rampage through the forest. Then she let him tend to her shoulder, his hands gentle despite their trembling. This needs real healing, he said quietly. If it gets infected, we'll deal with it if it happens. You should go back. Get proper medical care. I'm not leaving you. Rhea caught his hand. Stop trying to push me away. I'm trying to keep you alive. Then do a better job of staying human. The words were harsh but needed. Kael's jaw tightened. I'm trying. I know. Rhea softened. I'm sorry. I'm scared too. You should be. I could snap at any moment, turn into that thing again and tear you apart. But you haven't. You're still here, still fighting. For now. They sat in silence for a while. The fire crackled. Outside, the forest sang its night songs. Tell me about the frontier, Rhea said eventually. You've been here before. What do we need to know? Kael was quiet for a moment. Then, it's lawless, dangerous. The kind of place where people disappear and no one asks questions. Sounds perfect for us. A ghost of a smile. There are settlements, small ones, outcasts and criminals mostly, but also people running from things. People who need to disappear. Like us. Like us, Kael agreed. If we can make it that far, and if I can stay human long enough to be useful. You're always useful. Even when I'm trying to kill you? Especially then. Keeps me on my toes. Kael shook his head, but his expression had softened. How are you joking right now? Because if I don't joke, I'll fall apart. Rhea pulled her knees to her chest. And I need to be strong for both of us right now. That's not your job, isn't it? You've been strong your whole life. Carried your kingdom on your shoulders. Maybe it's time someone carried you for a while. Kael looked at her like she was something precious, breakable. I don't deserve you, he said quietly. You're right, you deserve better, but you're stuck with me anyway. He reached for her, pulling her close. She settled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. What's the plan? Kael asked. Long term. Survive. Find a way to stabilize you. Then, Rhea paused. I don't know. See what's left. The kingdom will be in chaos. Let it be. You have advisors, generals. They can manage for a while. They'll send hunters after us. Then we'll run faster. Kael's arms tightened around her. I should have fought harder. Should have told Arianen and the council to go to hell and chosen you from the start. You were being a good king. I was being a coward. You were being human. Rhea tilted her head to look up at him. And that's enough. It's always been enough. They held each other as the fire burned low. Eventually, exhaustion pulled Rhea towards sleep. She woke to Kael's strangled gasp. His body was rigid, shaking. His eyes had gone amber again, pupils blown wide. "Rhea," he gritted out. "Move. Now." She didn't move. Instead, she cupped his face in both hands. "Look at me. Focus on me." "Can't. It's too strong." "Yes, you can." She forced him to meet her eyes. "You're Kael Draven. You're the Alpha who united 6 territories. You've survived wars and politics and a brutal father. You're stronger than this." "Not strong enough. Then borrow my strength." She pressed her forehead to his. "Take what you need from me. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." Kael's breathing was ragged. His whole body trembled. But slowly, gradually, the amber in his eyes faded back to their normal color. He collapsed forward, his weight pressing her into the ground. "I almost lost it," he whispered against her neck. "Almost couldn't come back." "But you did. You came back." "What if next time I don't?" "Then I'll drag you back myself." Rhea ran her fingers through his hair. "However many times it takes." "This can't work. Long term, this is unsustainable." "We'll find a way to make it sustainable." "How?" "I don't know yet. But I will." She kissed his temple. "We didn't come this far to fail now." Over the next 3 days, they pushed deeper into the frontier. Kael shifted between human and wolf form, fighting the beast each time with less success. But Rhea stayed by his side, anchoring him with touch and voice and stubborn refusal to give up. They found a settlement on the 4th day. A rough collection of wooden buildings huddled against a hillside. Smoke rose from chimneys. People moved through muddy streets. "Stay here," Kael said. "Let me scout it first." "No, we go together." "Rhea..." "Together," she said firmly. "I'm not letting you out of my sight." They entered the settlement cautiously. People looked at them with suspicious eyes, but no one challenged them. A tavern sat at the settlement's center. They went inside. The bartender was a grizzled man with scars across his knuckles. He took one look at Kael and said, "You're a long way from civilization, Alpha." "That's the idea," Kael said. "Running from something? Running toward something." The bartender's eyes flicked to Rhea. "She the something?" "She's everything." A smile cracked the bartender's weathered face. "Well, you've come to the right place. Nobody here asks questions. Nobody cares who you were before. You can be whoever you need to be." "We need supplies," Rhea said. "Food, medicine, clothes." "We can arrange that. For a price." "We have nothing to trade," Kael admitted. "Then you'll work for it. We always need strong backs around here." The bartender studied them. "You look like you can handle yourselves." "We can," Rhea said. "Good. There's a cabin up the hill, empty. You can use it if you help with the construction of the new grain storage." It wasn't much, but it was a start, a chance to catch their breath, to figure out what came next. Rhea took the offered key with hands that shook only slightly. "Thank you," she said. The bartender shrugged. "Everyone deserves a second chance. Even alphas running from their demons." They found the cabin as the sun set. It was small, rough, but sturdy. A far cry from palace chambers, but it was theirs. Kael collapsed onto the single bed while Rhea unpacked their meager supplies. "We did it," she said quietly. "We made it." "This isn't over," Kael said. "They'll still come looking." "Let them look. They won't find us here." Rhea sat beside him. "And even if they do, we'll be ready." Kael pulled her down, tucking her against his side. "I never thanked you," he said. "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For following me into hell and dragging me back out." "You'd do the same for me." "In a heartbeat." They lay in the gathering darkness, listening to the sounds of the settlement below. "What happens now?" Rhea asked. "Now we survive. We build something new. And we figure out how to live with broken pieces." "Sounds perfect." Kael's hand found hers in the dark. Their fingers intertwined. And for the first time since the rejection, Rhea felt something like hope. They weren't fixed, weren't healed. The bond was still broken, the future still uncertain, but they were together. And that was enough. For now, that was everything. 3 weeks passed in the frontier settlement like water through fingers. Rhea worked alongside the other settlers, hauling timber for the grain storage, learning to mend tools and stretch meager supplies. Her hands developed calluses, her shoulder healed crooked but functional. Kale worked harder than anyone, as if physical exhaustion could keep the wolf at bay. Most days it worked. Some days it didn't. On those bad days, Rhea would find him in the woods beyond the settlement, half-shifted and trembling, fighting himself. She'd talk him back, touch him back, refuse to let the beast win. It was getting easier, fractionally. The episodes came less often, but they still came. "It's not sustainable," Kyle said one evening as they sat outside their cabin. The sun was setting, painting the sky in violent shades of orange and red. "Eventually I'll lose control when you're not there. I'll hurt someone. Then we make sure I'm always there." "Rhea, I mean it." She turned to face him. "We're figuring this out, day by day. It's working. For now, that's all we can ask for." Kael's jaw tightened. "You deserve better than this. Better than watching me fight myself every day. Better than hiding in the frontier because I can't control my own wolf. What I deserve is a choice." Rhea grabbed his hand. "And I choose this. I choose you, broken pieces and all." He looked at her like she was something impossible, something he couldn't quite believe was real. Before he could respond, a commotion erupted from the settlement below. Shouts, the sound of horses. Kale was on his feet instantly, body tense. "Stay here." Like hell. They moved down the hill together. A crowd had gathered in the main square. At its center stood a contingent of royal guards in black stone colors, and leading them was Lord Hadrian. Rhea's stomach dropped. The crowd parted as Kale approached. Settlers who'd come to respect the quiet alpha, who worked harder than anyone and never complained, who'd earned his place through sweat and silence. Hadrian's eyes found Kyle, then Rhea. His expression was unreadable. "Your Majesty," Hadrian said formally, "you've been difficult to track." "That was the idea," Kale said. His voice was level, but Rhea could feel the tension vibrating through him. "What do you want, Hadrian?" "To bring you home. I'm not coming back. The kingdom needs you. The kingdom has Princess Ariane. Let her rule." Hadrian's expression flickered. "Princess Ariane left 2 days after you disappeared. She returned to Northmarch and formally dissolved the betrothal." Silence fell like a stone. "What?" Kyle said slowly. "She said she wouldn't marry a man who loved someone else. That the alliance wasn't worth the foundation of lies." Hadrian's eyes cut to Rhea. "She blamed you, girl, said you'd poisoned the king's mind against her." "I didn't," Rhea started. "She's not wrong, though, is she?" Hadrian continued. "You did poison him, with hope, with the idea that he could choose love over duty." "That's not poison," Rhea said. "That's called being human. Kings don't get to be human. They have responsibilities." "Then maybe the responsibilities need to change." Hadrian's laugh was bitter. Spoken like someone who's never had to rule, never had to make impossible choices. He turned back to Kyle. "The southern territories are threatening to withdraw their support. The eastern lords are questioning your fitness to rule. Without the Northmarch alliance, everything is falling apart." "Then let it fall," Kyle said quietly. The crowd gasped. "You don't mean that," Hadrian said. "Don't I? I spent my entire life building that kingdom, holding together territories that hate each other through sheer force of will and strategic marriages. And what did it get me? A broken mate bond and a wolf I can barely control. It got you peace, stability, a kingdom that hasn't seen war in 10 years. A peace built on lies and political marriages, on alphas forced to choose alliances over bonds." Kale's eyes blazed. "Maybe it deserves to fall. And the people who depend on that stability? The farmers and merchants and families who've built lives in that peace?" Hadrian's voice hardened. "Do they deserve to suffer because you chose a servant over your kingdom?" The words hit like blows. Rhea saw Kyle flinch. "That's not fair," she said. "Fair? You want to talk about fair?" Hadrian rounded on her. "You're a maid who stumbled into something you didn't understand and broke it. You rejected a mate bond without knowing what it would do. You nearly destroyed the most powerful alpha in 6 territories because you thought you were helping." "I was trying to save him." "You almost killed him." And she saved me, Kael cut in. When I was lost in the feral state, when everyone else would have put me down like a rabid dog, she came after me. She brought me back. For how long? Hadrian challenged. How long before you lose control again? Before you hurt someone? Kill someone? He gestured to the settlers watching. These people have been kind to you, given you shelter. Do they deserve to die when your wolf breaks free? Kael's hands clenched into fists. That won't happen. You can't guarantee that. No, but I can guarantee that going back to being the king you want, the one who marries for alliances and buries his own needs, that will kill me just as surely as the feral state. Hadrian was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, almost sad. I'm not the enemy here, Your Majesty. I'm trying to save what's left. The council is meeting in 3 days. They're going to vote on whether to declare you unfit to rule. If that happens, the kingdom will splinter. Civil war becomes inevitable. Then let them vote. Kyle. Hadrian stopped, drew in a breath. Please, come back. Face the council. Make your case. If you still choose to abdicate after that, so be it. But give the kingdom a chance to survive this. Why should I? Because despite everything, you're still a good king, and good kings don't abandon their people, even when those people fail them. The words hung in the air. Rhea watched Kael's face, saw the war playing out behind his eyes, duty versus desire, kingdom versus mate. I can't go back without her, Kael said finally. If I return, she returns. As my equal. Not as a servant, not as something to be ashamed of. The council will never accept, then the council can go to hell. Kael's voice hardened. Those are my terms, non-negotiable. Hadrian looked at Rhea, really looked at her for the first time, taking in her calloused hands and sun-darkened skin and the dress patched with rough thread. You understand what you're asking, Hadrian said to her. If you return as his equal, as his chosen mate, you'll be challenged at every turn. The nobles will despise you. The common people will think you've risen above your station, and if the kingdom falls, they'll blame you. They already blame me, Rhea said. Might as well give them a good reason. Something that might have been respect flickered across Hadrian's face. You've changed, he said. I stopped being scared. That might be the most dangerous thing of all. Hadrian turned back to Kael. 3 days. That's when the council meets. If you're not there, they'll vote without you. We'll be there, Kael said. After Hadrian and the guards left, the settlers dispersed slowly. The bartender approached, his weathered face thoughtful. You're really a king? He asked Kael. Apparently. And you're really going back? Have to, whether I want to or not. The bartender nodded slowly. For what it's worth, you're welcome back here if it doesn't work out. Both of you. We take care of our own. Thank you, Rhea said quietly. That night, Rhea and Kael lay in their small cabin, neither sleeping. You don't have to come, Kael said into the darkness. You could stay here, be safe. We've had this conversation. I know, but I need to say it anyway. If you come back with me, your life will never be your own again. Every move scrutinized, every word analyzed. People will tear you apart just for existing. They've been tearing me apart my whole life. At least this time I'll have a reason to fight back. Kael rolled to face her. In the moonlight filtering through the window, his eyes were serious. I'm asking you to walk into a lion's den with me, and I can't promise I'll be able to protect you from all of it. I don't need you to protect me. I need you beside me. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. Rhea cupped his face. Protection is what you give someone weak. Partnership is what you offer equals. I'm not asking you to save me, Kael. I'm asking you to let me stand with you, as your mate, your equal, your choice. His eyes burned into hers. They'll say you're not worthy, that you're nobody. Let them. I'll prove them wrong. How? By being exactly who I am. A servant who learned to stop apologizing for existing, who chose love over safety, who walked into the wilderness to save a king everyone else had given up on. Her voice strengthened. That's not nothing, that's everything. Kael kissed her, deep and fierce and tasting of desperation and hope in equal measure. I don't deserve you, he whispered against her lips. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. They left for Blackstone at dawn. The journey took 2 days, long enough for Rhea's nerves to fray, long enough for doubt to creep in. But every time she faltered, Kael was there, a hand on her back, a steady presence beside her. They reached the palace gates as the sun set on the second day. The guards stared, whispered, but they opened the gates. Word spread through the palace like wildfire. The king had returned, and he'd brought the servant girl with him. By the time they reached the throne room, the entire council had assembled, lords and ladies in their finery, watching with cold eyes as Kael and Rhea entered. Rhea wore the same patched dress from the frontier. Her hair was simply braided. She had no jewels, no fine clothes, no armor against their judgment. She had only herself, and Kael beside her. Lord Hadrian stood at the front of the assembly. "Your Majesty, you came. I gave my word. And you brought her." "I brought my mate," Kael corrected. "Rhea Carter, the woman who saved my life when all of you had written me off as lost." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Lord Castor stepped forward, the southern lord who'd helped expose Rhea's deception. His face was twisted with contempt. "You can't be serious. She's a servant, a fraud. She has no noble blood, no title, no training. She's completely unsuitable to be queen." "She's completely suitable to be my mate," Kael said. "That's all that matters." "It's not all that matters," Castor's voice rose. "You're asking us to accept a commoner as our queen, to bow to a maid who lied to us all? I'm asking you to accept the woman I choose, the woman who proved herself stronger and braver than any of you." "By what measure?" Lady Morgana called out. "What has she done except cause chaos?" Rhea's hands clenched. But before Kael could respond, she stepped forward. "You want to know what I've done?" Her voice rang clear through the throne room. "I walked into the frontier alone. No weapons, no training, no backup. I tracked a feral alpha through hostile territory. And when I found him, when he had me by the throat and could have torn me apart, I didn't run. I brought him back." "Through trickery?" Someone started. "Through trust," Rhea cut them off. "Through being willing to die if that's what it took. Through choosing him when all of you had already given up." "You're the one who broke him in the first place," Castor spat, "by rejecting the mate bond." "You're right. I made a mistake, a terrible one. I thought I was doing the noble thing, the selfless thing. Turns out I was just being a coward." Rhea's gaze swept the assembly. "But at least I went back to fix it. At least I didn't hide behind duty and tradition and let him destroy himself." "How dare you? How dare I what? Tell the truth?" Rhea's voice hardened. "You want to know what I think? I think you're all terrified, not of me being unsuitable, but of what it means if someone like me can become queen. It means your bloodlines and your noble houses and your carefully arranged marriages don't matter as much as you thought. It means the old rules can change." Silence fell. Then Lady Morgana laughed, sharp and cutting. "You have courage. I'll give you that. Stupid courage. But courage nonetheless." She turned to Kael. "Your Majesty, even if we accepted this madness, what about the alliance with Northmarch? Princess Ariane dissolved the betrothal. We need that alliance to maintain stability in the northern territories." "Then we'll find another way to maintain it," Kael said. "Through trade agreements, military cooperation, something other than forced marriages." "That's not how power works." "Then maybe it's time power worked differently." Lord Hadrian stepped forward, his expression grave. "Your Majesty, the council was prepared to vote on your fitness to rule, given your instability following the bond rejection. But I propose we table that vote. Instead, we vote on a different question." "Which is?" Kael asked. "Whether we, as a council, will accept Rhea Carter as your chosen mate and future queen." Hadrian's eyes swept the assembly. "A simple majority. If the vote passes, she's recognized. If it fails..." He left the implications hanging. "And if it fails?" Rhea asked. "Then His Majesty must choose, the throne or you." The ultimatum hung in the air like a blade. Rhea's heart hammered. This was it, the moment everything either came together or fell apart. Kael's hand found hers, squeezed once. "Call the vote," he said. Hadrian nodded. "All those in favor of accepting Rhea Carter as the king's mate and future queen, raise your hands." Rhea held her breath. Hadrian's hand went up first. Then, surprisingly, Lady Morgana's. A few others followed. Minor lords and ladies, not many, maybe a third of the assembly. Not enough. Those opposed? More hands rose. Lord Castor's immediately, others joining him. The old guard. The traditionalists. Rhea counted. Her stomach sank. They were going to lose. Then a voice rang out from the back of the chamber. I support the motion. Everyone turned. Princess Ariane stood in the doorway. She'd returned, and she was dressed in full formal regalia, every inch the noble princess. She walked through the assembly with her head high, stopped directly in front of Rhea. You were right, Ariane said quietly. That day in the throne room, when you took the blame. You lied to protect him. I saw it even then, but I was too angry to admit it. Your Highness, Rhea started. No, let me finish. Ariane's voice strengthened. I came here expecting a political marriage, a strategic alliance. What I found was a king half dead from denying his own heart, and a servant brave enough to walk into hell to save him. She turned to address the council. If we reject her now, we're saying that love and loyalty matter less than bloodlines, that courage and sacrifice count for nothing compared to noble birth. Is that really the kingdom we want to be? Murmurs spread through the assembly. I dissolve my betrothal not out of spite, Ariane continued, but because I won't trap a good man in a loveless marriage. And I support Rhea Carter as queen because she's earned it, through actions, not heritage. She raised her hand in support. Others followed. Slowly at first, then faster, hands rising throughout the chamber. Lord Hadrian counted, then counted again. The motion passes, he said, by a margin of 7 votes. It wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't a landslide, but it was enough. Rhea's knees nearly gave out. Kael's arm came around her waist, steadying her. The council recognizes Rhea Carter as King Kael's chosen mate, Hadrian announced formally, with all rights and responsibilities thereof. Lord Castor's face was purple with rage. This is an outrage, a mockery of everything we stand for. Then perhaps what we stand for needs examining. Lady Morgana cut him off. The vote is concluded, Castor. Accept it with grace or leave. Castor looked like he wanted to argue, but he'd been outvoted, outmaneuvered. He stormed from the chamber, several other lords following. Hadrian watched them go with a neutral expression. Then he turned to Kael. Your Majesty, there's still the matter of your condition. The council needs assurance that you can control the feral states. I can't, Kael said bluntly. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Not alone, Kael continued, but with Rhea, I can manage it. The bond might be broken, but our connection remains. She anchors me, brings me back when I start to slip. That's not a permanent solution, Hadrian said carefully. No, but we're working on finding one. Kael's voice hardened. In the meantime, I'm still capable of ruling, of making decisions, of leading this kingdom. Unless the council disagrees. It was a challenge, a line in the sand. Hadrian met his gaze for a long moment, then inclined his head. The council does not disagree, but we will expect regular reports on your condition and contingency plans should the worst occur. Fair enough. The assembly slowly dispersed, nobles murmuring among themselves, some shooting Rhea looks of disgust, others with grudging respect. When the throne room finally emptied, Rhea let herself lean against Kael. We did it, she whispered. You did it. You convinced them. We convinced them. Together. Princess Ariane approached before leaving. I meant what I said, about you earning this. Thank you, Rhea said, for coming back, for supporting us. I didn't do it for you. I did it because it was right. Ariane's expression softened slightly. But for what it's worth, I hope you prove them all wrong. I hope you become the best damn queen this kingdom has ever seen. I'll try. Don't try. Do it. Ariane glanced at Kael. Take care of him. And take care of yourself. This won't be easy. I know. After Ariane left, Kael and Rhea stood alone in the throne room. What happens now? Rhea asked. Now we rebuild. The kingdom. Ourselves. Our bond. Kael pulled her close. We figure out how to be king and queen, how to rule together, how to prove to everyone that choosing love over duty wasn't weakness. It wasn't. It was the bravest thing you've ever done. We've ever done, Kael corrected. They stood together as the last light of day faded from the high windows. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles, new people determined to prove them wrong, but they'd faced worse, survived worse, and they'd do it again, together. The next months were brutal, exactly as hard as everyone had warned. Harder, maybe. Lord Castor led a faction of nobles who refused to acknowledge Rhea as queen. They blocked proposals, delayed decisions, made governing nearly impossible. The common people were divided. Some saw Rhea as an inspiration, proof that anyone could rise. Others saw her as an upstart, someone who didn't know her place. And through it all, Rhea had to learn to be queen, had to study history and law and diplomacy, had to navigate court politics that made frontier survival look simple. But she had Kael. And slowly, painfully, they rebuilt their bond. Not through magic or ritual, through choice. Every morning, they chose each other. Every night, they reaffirmed the commitment. And gradually, day by day, the broken connection between them strengthened. It would never be what it was before. The rejection had left scars that would never fully heal, but it was real. It was theirs, built not on fate or biology, but on decision and dedication. And that made it stronger. 6 months after the council vote, Rhea stood before the assembled court for her formal coronation as queen. She wore a gown of deep green, simple and elegant. No excessive jewels, no ostentatious display, just herself. Enough. As the crown settled on her head, she looked out at the faces watching, some still hostile, some uncertain, but more and more were starting to accept her, starting to see that strength came in many forms, that queens could be forged in hardship instead of born to privilege. Kael stood beside her, his hand in hers. "Any regrets?" he whispered. Rhea thought about the girl she'd been, the one who stumbled drunk into the wrong chambers and accidentally changed everything. That girl had been terrified, invisible, desperate to disappear. This woman, this queen, she was none of those things. "Not a single one," Rhea said. The court erupted in cheers, not universal, not overwhelming, but genuine. And in that moment, Rhea understood. She'd never be the queen they expected, never fit the mold they wanted. But she could be the queen they needed, the one who proved that love and courage and stubborn refusal to give up mattered more than bloodlines. That night, as she and Kael stood on their private balcony watching the celebration below, Rhea felt something shift inside her. The broken bond, still damaged, still wrong, suddenly flared with warmth, not healed, but different, changed. Kael felt it too. His eyes widened. "What was that?" "I don't know." Rhea pressed her hand to her chest. "It felt like acceptance, like our bond recognizing what we've built. A new bond, not faded, chosen." "Better than faded," Rhea said, "because we fought for it, because we chose it even when it was hard." Kael pulled her close, kissed her under the stars while their kingdom celebrated below. They'd started with a mistake. A drunk maid and a bathtub and a chain of events that should have destroyed them both. Instead, they'd built something impossible, proven that the old rules could change, that servants could become queens, that broken things could be remade into something stronger. Not perfect, never perfect, but real, true, theirs. And that was more than enough. Years later, when people told the story of King Kael and Queen Rhea, they focused on different things. Some emphasized the political reforms they enacted, the way they opened the nobility to those who earned their place through merit instead of birth. Others talked about the alliance restructuring, how they'd built partnerships based on cooperation instead of forced marriages. But Rhea's favorite stories were the simple ones, the ones told in taverns and around kitchen fires, the ones about the servant who refused to give up, who walked into the wilderness and brought back her king, who proved that love was stronger than tradition. That choice was more powerful than fate. Those stories gave hope to people like she'd been, the invisible ones, the discarded ones, the ones told they'd never be more than what they were born to be. And every time Rhea heard those stories, she smiled, because she knew the truth. You didn't have to be born special to become extraordinary. You just had to be brave enough to make a different choice, and stubborn enough to see it through.